Have you ever noticed how some people seem to have truly unstoppable years while others live in an eternal roller coaster of ups and downs? Think about it, there are people who regardless of what happens around them always maintain a high standard of performance, discipline and results. Meanwhile, most people start January full of energy, make some changes for a few weeks and by March they're back to old patterns. Between you and me, this is no coincidence. There's a secret that separates these two categories of people, and this secret was discovered over 2,000 years ago by the most powerful men in human history. I'm talking about Roman emperors, specifically Marcus Aurelius, who ruled the greatest empire the world has ever known for almost 2 decades without ever having a year that could be considered failed. What's most fascinating is that Marcus Aurelius wasn't born prepared to be emperor. He was chosen and molded through a personal development system so effective that it transformed an ordinary young man into the most respected leader of his time. And this system didn't depend on external resources, advanced technology, or perfect conditions. It depended solely on 4 fundamental pillars that anyone can apply today. Marcus Aurelius wrote in his personal reflections that the secret wasn't in controlling external events, but in shaping his internal response to these events consistently and unstoppably. He said that the difference between a mediocre year and an extraordinary year lay in the ability to maintain the same high standards regardless of external circumstances. But here's the problem most people face nowadays. We've been conditioned to believe that success depends on constant motivation, perfect conditions, or having more resources. That's why we start January motivated, make some superficial changes, and when the first difficulty appears, when initial motivation diminishes, we return to old patterns and consider another year lost. This approach is fundamentally wrong because it treats personal development as a one-time event instead of a sustainable system. It's like trying to build an empire based only on initial enthusiasm instead of creating solid structures that work long-term. Marcus Aurelius knew that emperors cannot depend on mood or motivation to make correct decisions every day for decades in a row. The second trap most people fall into is focusing only on external results without building the internal foundations that sustain those results. We want more discipline without developing the principles that create natural discipline. We want better results without understanding the mental processes that generate those results consistently. The third trap is trying to change everything at the same time. We want to revolutionize our entire life in January and end up overloading our mental system to the point of collapse. Marcus Aurelius understood that lasting transformation happens through sustainable incremental changes, not through drastic revolutions we can't maintain. Marcus Aurelius developed what I call the 4 pillars of emperors, a system based on Stoic philosophy that transformed ordinary men into unstoppable leaders. The first pillar is what he called morning mental preparation. Every day, before any activity, Marcus Aurelius dedicated time to align his mind with his fundamental values and mentally prepare for the day's challenges. He wrote in his personal diary that starting the day without this preparation was like a general entering battle without strategy. Morning mental preparation wasn't just passive meditation, it was an active process of visualizing potential challenges, remembering fundamental principles and clearly defining the day's priorities. In modern practice, this means creating a morning ritual that connects you with your deepest goals and prepares your mind to maintain high standards regardless of what happens during the day. It doesn't need to be complicated, but it needs to be consistent and directed toward your fundamental values. The second pillar is focus control through what Marcus Aurelius called constant discernment. He knew that the human mind naturally disperses in 1,000 different directions, especially when you have great responsibilities. That's why he developed specific techniques to maintain absolute focus on what really matters. Marcus Aurelius practiced the exercise of constantly asking himself whether what he was focusing on at that moment was really essential for his greater objectives. He said that most of the worries and distractions that occupy our minds are irrelevant to our fundamental purposes, but consume our mental energy as if they were matters of life and death. The third pillar is discipline through unbreakable micro-commitments. Marcus Aurelius understood that discipline is not supernatural willpower, but the result of keeping small commitments to yourself absolutely consistently. He created specific micro-commitments and treated them as sacred oaths. These micro-commitments were small enough to be maintained even on the most difficult days, but significant enough to create real momentum. For example, he committed to writing at least 3 personal reflections every day, regardless of how busy he was governing the empire. The fourth pillar is reflective evening evaluation. Marcus Aurelius ended each day by making an honest analysis of his actions, decisions, and alignment with his principles. It wasn't a process of destructive self-criticism, but a constructive evaluation that allowed continuous adjustments and accelerated learning. He wrote about his mistakes not to blame himself, but to identify patterns and create better strategies for similar situations in the future. This practice of evening reflection was what allowed exponential growth instead of just repeating the same patterns indefinitely. Now I'll show you how to transform these 4 pillars into a practical system you can implement immediately. The first week is dedicated to establishing the pillar of morning mental preparation. For 7 days, you'll wake up 15 minutes earlier and dedicate this time exclusively to align your mind with your most important goals. It's not for checking your phone, it's not for thinking about problems. It's for connecting with your fundamental values, visualizing your ideal day and establishing the 3 absolute priorities of the day. These initial 15 minutes will determine the energetic quality of the entire rest of the day. During the second week, maintaining morning preparation, you add the pillar of focus control. Every 2 hours during the day, you take a 30-second pause to ask yourself if you're focused on what really matters. If you're not, redirect immediately. It seems simple, but this practice completely transforms your ability to maintain sustained focus. In the third week, you implement the pillar of Unbreakable Micro-Commitments. Choose 3 specific micro-commitments you'll maintain every day without exception. They can be things like drinking 2 liters of water, writing 1 page in a journal, or doing 10 push-ups. The important thing isn't grandness, but absolute consistency. The fourth week completes the system with reflective evening evaluation. Before sleeping, dedicate 10 minutes to review the day, identify what worked well, what can be improved, and how you can apply these lessons the next day. This reflection process accelerates your personal development exponentially. The secret to sustaining this system long-term lies in what Marcus Aurelius called gradual expansion. After mastering the 4 basic pillars for 1 month, you can gradually expand the complexity and depth of each practice. Never expand everything at the same time, always one variable at a time. For example, after consolidating 15 minutes of morning preparation, you can expand to 20 minutes. After mastering 3 micro-commitments, you can add a 4th. This gradual expansion approach prevents system collapse and allows sustainable growth. Marcus Aurelius also practiced what he called the never-zero policy. Even on the most difficult, busiest, or most challenging days, he maintained at least a minimum version of each pillar. If he couldn't do 15 minutes of morning preparation, he did at least 5. If he couldn't fulfill all micro-commitments, he fulfilled at least 1. This never-zero policy is fundamental because it maintains psychological momentum and avoids the domino effect of total surrender. Most people think in terms of all or nothing, and when they break once, they use it as an excuse to break everything. Marcus Aurelius knew that imperfect consistency is infinitely superior to unsustainable perfectionism. To sustain this system for an entire year, Marcus Aurelius created what he called intelligent rewards. Every 30 days of consistency in the 4 pillars, he allowed himself a significant reward that was aligned with his greater values. They weren't rewards that sabotaged his progress, but celebrations that reinforced his identity as a disciplined person. Marcus Aurelius understood that real transformation doesn't happen through brute willpower, but through gradual construction of a new personal identity. Every day you maintain the 4 pillars, you're reinforcing your identity as a person who has control over their life and maintains high standards regardless of circumstances. The final result of this system isn't just a more productive or disciplined year. It's a fundamental transformation in how you see yourself and how you respond to life's challenges. You develop what Marcus Aurelius called imperturbability, the ability to maintain internal balance and high standards even amid external chaos. Think about it. Imagine finishing this year looking back and seeing 12 months of consistent growth, sustainable discipline, and real progress toward your most important goals. Imagine developing the internal confidence that comes from knowing you're capable of keeping commitments to yourself regardless of circumstances. Marcus Aurelius once said that the quality of our life is determined by the quality of our thoughts and the consistency of our actions. When you align these 2 elements through the 4 pillars, you create an unstoppable force that transforms not just 1 year, but your entire life trajectory. The moment to implement these pillars isn't tomorrow, isn't Monday, isn't next month. It's right now. Because every day you postpone is 1 less day of development, 1 less day of growth, one less day of building the highest version of yourself. Let me ask you a direct question. Of the 4 pillars I just shared, morning mental preparation, focus control, unbreakable micro-commitments, and reflective evening evaluation, which one resonates most with where you are at this moment in your life? Comment below because I want to understand which emperor strategy will make the most difference in your current reality. If this content made sense to you, if you can see how these principles can transform your next year, leave your like so more people have access to these ancient strategies. And subscribe to the channel because here we continue exploring how to apply the wisdom of history's great leaders to modern world challenges. Thanks for watching until here, and remember, an unstoppable year begins with an unstoppable decision.